And let's go back to our breaking news of that crash of the Air India plane in Ahmedabad that was bound for Gatwick Airport in London. And we're joined now by aviation analyst Alex Macheras. Alex, good to have you with us. Now, what is your understanding of what happened given the plane had crashed very soon after takeoff?
Well, what we know so far, and there are very few details, but as you say, it is an unfortunate crash, what looks like it's going to be a catastrophic accident that has taken place in one of the two critical phases of the flight. In any flight, critical phases are takeoff and landing. It's what requires the most coordination, the highest workload in the flight deck, and for all the other areas that come together for the safe flow of air travel from A to B. In that phase, it's the takeoff and the moments after that that we know this 787 Dreamliner had suffered something that had the aircraft struggle to gain altitude. That's what the video footage that has surfaced appears to show us. But as of now, in terms of actual details as to the contributors in what could have gone wrong or what could have played a role in having the 787 struggle to gain altitude, that's still all very uncertain. As we speak, the search and rescue operation continues to unfold. That's underway with the priority, understandably so, being human lives. I'm also hearing from the US that the US and Boeing are preparing to dispatch a team to the site in Western India, as is standard when a US manufactured aircraft, this time from the likes of Boeing, has been involved in such an accident.
Yes, and what are the chances of survival? We know from accounts in India, 30 bodies have been recovered from local media reports there, but also given that the plane had a full load of fuel.
Yeah, so of course there are areas which will understandably worsen the survival rate, and as you say, an aircraft with around 10 hours worth of fuel on board, so that's very heavy, but also very flammable. This aircraft should have been operating a normal 9-hour flight to Gatwick. It was full with over 240 on board, and tragically it came down in such a densely populated area of the city. All of this will only worsen the outcome, unfortunately. And I think this is sadly shaping up to be one of India's worst ever aviation accidents, at least for recent modern aviation history, perhaps even globally. Quite unprecedented for it also to involve an aircraft like the 787, which has an impeccable safety record. There are over 1,100 of them in service globally. They carry almost 500,000 passengers every day as a global fleet of 787s. And so with that, you know, there is that added kind of distress for the industry as to how was such a modern, proven safe aircraft involved in something so catastrophic. Everybody wants answers, understandably so.
Can you tell us what will happen, what's happening in the background, both for Air India as an aviation company, but also Boeing, seeing that this incident has happened?
So Air India and the owners, the Tata Group, are now coordinating in something that will be very well rehearsed and already planned. Every airline, major or small, plans for these worst case scenarios. And thankfully, they don't have to ever execute these plans for many of these airlines because we categorically have the safest form of transport. But Air India right now working with the local authorities on the ground, the authorities that are leading the search and rescue operation, and then later every other stakeholder involved in the investigation, which will focus on answers. So that will involve Boeing. And as I said, Boeing are sending a team to Western India as is standard protocol. And they'll be trying to ascertain and to gain answers as quickly as they can, if only to rule out things. Because as I said, when you have an aircraft of this safe, proven safety record in service everywhere, it is very important that the investigators are able to rule out things to ensure that actually this isn't an accident waiting to happen on other aircraft elsewhere. And so that's the primary focus of the investigation as it goes forward. But as I say, we really still are in early days of this right now, and that search and rescue operation takes hold as the priority initially.
Yes, can you talk us through then, we are seeing pictures of firefighters battling the blaze, continuing to do so as we speak. Talk us through what are the immediate things that happen in a rather complicated situation, because this crash did happen over a densely populated area.
So the difficulties here are, of course, the area that the aircraft has come down in, but also the fact that the aircraft had 240 plus on board. So the priority is not just the human lives on board, but perhaps those that have been impacted on the ground as well. We know that this is a densely populated city, but it's specifically a very densely populated area of the city. There are reports that actually the aircraft has come down on an accommodation for doctors, and this is all going to add to the uncertainty of the ultimately how they're going to execute this this search and rescue operation, which is underway. The priority will always continue to be human lives until the authority leading that operation switches it from search and rescue to recovery. And recovery focuses less on the search for survivors and more on key elements like the black box, the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, that will all help provide answers to investigators as that investigation gets underway.
And given this happened over land, are we expecting then that the black box will be intact for investigators to continue their probe?
It's very difficult to know whether or not the black box is able to withstand something like this. But I will say that in accidents of this severity, black boxes are designed to be able to ultimately withstand, and the hope is that they will be intact and at least readable in order to assist with that investigation. So it's not a certainty, but it's likely that it's okay.
Yes, and on the side of Gatwick Airport in London, seeing what's happening, that plane was supposed to get there 6:30 p.m. local time. What are the precautions that airport might be taking?
Well, that airport, London Gatwick, also has its procedure that they will now be executing as to support family members, to support those that will have been arriving to the airport later in the evening, London time, to be able to pick up loved ones who are on board. We can talk about the situation with Boeing, we can talk about air travel, but ultimately this is an aircraft carrying over 240 human lives, and it will touch so many globally, with, of course, Indian nationals on board, but also citizens of countries including the UK, Portugal, Canada. This is a global airline, Air India, not just flying passengers to and from India, but also acting as a key gateway to South Asia and travel between Asia Pacific and Europe. And that's why you're going to get a number of nationalities on board, and this is going to touch many. So Gatwick will be following their protocol along with other airports and other countries as to what to do with in relation to supporting loved ones, and the fact that, yes, this aircraft was bound for London Gatwick. It's a flight that operates almost daily and sadly has been involved in such a catastrophic incident.
Yes, and this tragic incident involves a long-established carrier like Air India. Can you speak to perhaps what sort of confidence that passengers might have, in the medium and longer term, given that this was, as you say, probably one of the worst air crashes, aviation incidents in Indian history?
Well, every airline following an accident takes, there is a dip in that trust that. There are jitters everywhere, not just across the industry, but across the world. But to speak of Air India, this is an airline with a good safety record, specifically over the last few decades. They do operate a mix of aircraft, many of them operating the latest generation aircraft like this 787 involved. The airline will, of course, want to ascertain and gain information as to whether or not they were playing a role, that they were, that flight crew, if this was something involving the way the aircraft was flown. This is all standard things. These are all standard things that are explored in this investigation period, because it's about ruling out. It's about being able to restore trust, but primarily it's about supporting the loved ones and hopefully survivors, if any, in such a big crash.
Yes, and you mentioned, of course, there are a lot of complexities here happening at the moment, and it's right now an emergency response to search for survivors, to search for possibly anyone that might have made it through. It's a humanitarian almost mission right now for authorities there in Ahmedabad. But going forward, in these sort of situations, major crashes of passenger jets, how long do you think these investigations can actually go for? How long can they stretch before, we have a good idea of what actually happened?
Typically, we have an idea as to the most significant contributor within the first few months. That's what's typical. We then have a more thorough idea within that first year report, and there is usually an obligation for an airline to publish those initial findings in a first-year report. And then, of course, investigations take as long as they need in order to be able to gather all of the facts and to have the industry learn from what went wrong. We are in very, very early days right now. And as I say, all of this is still to come. Primarily, the focus is that search and rescue operation right now, which I expect to be switched to something like a recovery operation over the coming day.
Okay, Alex Macheras, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.